Okay, happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Before we get to our NEC meeting, we of course have a special guest to speak with us who only has a few minutes to speak because he has been called to the White House. Let me introduce him without formality and without further ado.
White House, it's a good call.
The Honorable Robert Wilkie has served as the U.S. Secretary of Veterans Affairs since July 30th, 2018. He is a great friend of this organization. He is the leader of what I personally consider to be the greatest integrated health organization in America, and I hope that he will allay every veteran's fears that it will be privatized. Before serving in the administration of President Donald Trump, Secretary Wilkie served on the National Security Council for President George W. Bush. The Secretary is also a colonel in the U.S. Air Force Reserve and the son, Air Force, I've never heard of it, and the son of an Army Artillery commander. I've heard of the Army Air Corps. He has visited our National Museum of American Jewish Military History and spoke to us at our national convention in 2008, but he specifically wanted to join us again. Secretary Wilkie.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for the honor. This is an important day for me. The very first presentation I gave as the Secretary of Veterans Affairs was to the oldest veterans group in the United States. And I'll take speaker's privilege here and get off of the script for a minute. You mentioned that I toured the National Museum. I toured it with my oldest friend, Judge Hallie Weinstein from Baltimore. She is the judge of the second oldest veterans treatment court in America, and her father is the late Lieutenant General Tom Weinstein, one of the honored members in your museum. And I was talking to my friends from Louisiana, people who are raising money for our new Fisher House in New Orleans being my hometown. There is a new book out called The Greatest Fury, The Battle of New Orleans and the Rebirth of America. And for those of us from New Orleans, the name Judah Touro is prominent. It is prominent in our very souls. Probably the greatest philanthropist, greatest merchant, greatest citizen in the history of that great city. And the description in the book is of the first genuine American army. Andrew Jackson assembled Choctaw Indians, Creek Indians, 2 battalions of free men of color, and one section of the line that absorbed the attack of the British troops that went farther than any other was the Jewish company, commanded by none other than Judah Touro, the first truly American army. And it is a monument not only to you, but to those that you remember every day and those that this organization honors every year. Talk for a minute about something that happened after I visited your museum. I was asked by Prime Minister Netanyahu to be the first cabinet member to speak at Israel's September 11th memorial. Israel is the only country that honors the 3,000 fallen from September 11th, 2001. It was probably the most moving experience of my professional life to see 2 nations not only joined in friendship, but joined in the remembrance of tragedy and the remembrance of eventual victory. I told the Prime Minister that there is no other place on earth where 2 nations come together as one, as we do in Jerusalem. And I also mentioned in the shadow of our new United States Embassy in Jerusalem, on behalf of the President of the United States, that when Americans travel to the united capital of Israel, because of that embassy, no American will ever have to say again next year in Jerusalem. So you've heard me talk about the unique place that you all have in the history of our nation and the history of our armed forces. I mean, 400 years ago when they started establishing New England, one of the founders said, let us establish the new word of Zion in this new world. And I will quote again what you already know, but I'm never tired of reading it. And that is Washington's letter as a soldier to the Two-Rose Synagogue in Newport, Rhode Island. And he said, it is now no more that toleration is spoken of as if it were the indulgence of one class of people that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. As my friend, the late Dr. Charles Krauthammer said, that was not mere tolerance, that was revolutionary acceptance. And the fact that you all are here is a testament to that promise. The 20th century brought new triumphs and new tragedies. World War I, thousands of Jewish Americans answered the call to the colors because they knew not only they were defending this new world, but they were launching into Europe to make a statement against the thousands and thousands who were perishing because of the pogroms that were going on in Eastern Europe. And in the 1940s, a fellow by the name of Melvin Kaminsky, he's better known to the world by a shorter name, Brooks. He was a peacenik, but he was one of the tens of thousands and tens of thousands who answered the colors. And he said it this way, I was a peacenik. I was against war, but I knew what was happening in Europe, and I knew what would happen to America if we didn't stop Hitler. This was the proper place to be. Mel Brooks actually won several decorations for valor. But during the time he served in Europe, and also recognizing what was going on in the Pacific, 38,000 Jewish Americans perished in the fight for freedom. More Jewish soldiers died in World War II than all the Americans who perished during the entire Korean War. 50,000 were awarded medals for valor. So it is fitting that we honor that service today with you, just a few weeks after we marked the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. And this year, we look forward to celebrating the 75th anniversary of Israel's founding. A few weeks ago, I was scheduled to speak to the National Guard, but because of the exigencies of working in the Trump administration, I got distracted. But I would have told the National Guard folks that we have always gone to war with an army that looks like America. I mentioned the Battle of New Orleans throughout our history. But in the 1800s, that meant enlisting slaves, Indians, people who had been forgotten by the rest of the world. Few hold that belief more strongly in an integrated America and a vibrant American fighting force than the people in this room. I, as the Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs, can do more than thank you. I'm proud to say that your VA is vital. It is stronger than it ever has been before. So I'm going to answer the question of privatization with a very simple response. There are 240 billion of them. That is the budget that I presented to the Congress on Monday. $240 billion, the largest budget in the history of our department, a department with 170 hospitals, 1,200 clinics, and 400,000 people, serving 9.5 million American veterans. Now, only in Washington, D.C., would a $240 billion budget be cause for concern about privatization. The only budget that is bigger than ours is the Department of Defense. But what have we done in the last year and a half? I'll give you some statistics that I will be using in front of the Congress that tell you how far we have come. Traditionally, the Department of Veterans Affairs has been 17 out of 17 when it comes to best places in government to work. Now, that's not a very healthy prescription for customer service if your employees are 17 out of 17 in terms of best places to work. I could say that this year, when those statistics were released, in the last year and a half, we've gone from 17 out of 17 to 6 out of 17. But more importantly, we have the highest patient satisfaction rates in our history. 90% of our veterans are completely satisfied with the services they get at VA. It is our eternal promise that the promise gave to America's veterans by Mr. Lincoln be kept, that we shall care for those who have borne the battle. But there are many things that we need to focus on. I am the son of a gravely wounded combat soldier. My service, compared to my father's, is extremely modest. I take what happened to those of you who served in Vietnam seriously. I saw it face to face as that child so many years ago, a father who went to war weighing 240 pounds, coming back after a year recovering from wounds in the hospital in Hawaii weighing 120 pounds. But more important, I saw what happened after 3 years of recovery when he was finally allowed to return to America's most decorated combat unit, the All-American Division, the 82nd Airborne Division, when he wasn't even allowed to wear his uniform off post. We never will return to those terrible, terrible days. But Vietnam is still with us. I will be presenting a report to you and to the country sometime at the end of March regarding veteran suicide. Let me put the national perspective in place before I talk about warriors. When I was growing up at Fort Bragg, the leading cause of death amongst American teenagers was automobile accidents. Today, the leading cause of death amongst American teenagers is suicide. For those of you from New York, suicide is ravaging the New York City Police Department. It's not only ravaging the New York City Police Department, it is ravaging the entire country. Veterans are not immune. As a matter of fact, the United States Army started taking statistics on veteran suicide, on Army suicide, during the administration of Benjamin Harrison in 1892. And yet, we have never had a national conversation about what it means when warriors come back. I use Audie Murphy as an example, the greatest of all combat soldiers from World War II. Audie Murphy slept with a pistol under his pillow for the rest of his life, and his wife reported after his death he would break out in sweats every night. No matter how good things were going in the movie industry, how rich he had become, how famous he was, every night. The point of that story is that we have never had a national conversation about mental health. And until we do, then investigating suicide will produce another federal report that nobody reads. It is long past time to remove the stigma of mental health and talk about it as a country. It is the last frontier in medicine. And too often our soldiers, and when I say soldiers, I mean the entire warrior class, have borne that burden. Every day, 20 take their lives, but 60% of those come from my father's era, your era for most of you, Vietnam. And it is long past time we finally close that last circle for those who served when no one else would in the jungles of Southeast Asia. The other thing that I will talk about, and is something that I hope, and I'm pretty confident we will begin bringing online later this year, late spring or summer. Finally, the electronic health record. Some of you were in the same boat as my father. After 30 years of jumping out of airplanes, war wounds, he left Fort Bragg carrying around an 800-page paper record that was disintegrating every day. We are now joined with the Department of Defense to finally begin creating an electronic health record that will begin the minute that young American walks into the military processing station to the minute that American is handed over to VA. We will know everything about that service in the continent, but also in war zones, so that we know what happened. But more importantly, it will be interoperable. It will be available so that we know what happened to that veteran when he goes to see that private doctor, or when she goes to see an orthopedist to look at her back or look at those knees that are starting to hurt. If it was simply just a scanning a device, I wouldn't have approved it. Other thing I will say is that the Mission Act, which kicked in on June 6th of this year, does something that is long overdue. First of all, it says if we cannot provide a service to veterans, a service that that veteran needs, or a service that would take too many days to provide, we allow that veteran the option of going in the private sector. Duke University, in conjunction with our hospital in Durham, North Carolina, because of that, we just performed the first non-living donor heart transplant to keep a veteran alive when we couldn't do it just by ourselves. The other thing about Mission, and I hope you all will take advantage of it, it says that you are now eligible for urgent care and the VA will pay for it. So that means if you have the flu, if you have a fever, if you have a cold, if you have a sprained ankle, we don't want to put you and your family through the trauma of going to an emergency room. And as of last week, 90% of our veterans are within a certain number of miles from an urgent care facility. We want you to take advantage of that. I'm going to veer off the subject of veterans for a minute to talk about, I think, a more important topic, and it's something that I addressed in Israel in a discussion about the BDS movement. The specter of anti-Semitism is raising its head now in the United States in ways that I never thought would be possible in my lifetime. Something that was always under the surface wherever you went in Europe, but unfathomable to me in 21st century America. I have a message from the president, and I will say, whether you support this president or not, I will quote the Prime Minister of Israel, who was here just a few weeks ago, who said that when it comes to the subject of anti-Semitism, there is no more forceful opponent of that most baleful of the human condition than the President of the United States. And I stand with him in standing up for the rights of those of you in this audience, but more importantly for the human rights that we as Americans have to defend every day. So please, please take that as a strong message from the occupant of the White House. I will conclude today with something that was very important to my father, and I know General Weinstein as well, and Hallie and I have both quoted this in our speeches. Both of our fathers were mighty airborne warriors, incredibly decorated, and their hero was a guy named Matthew Bunker Ridgway. He commanded the All-American Division to victory in North Africa and in Sicily. And he was tasked by President Eisenhower with planning the airborne assault on Hitler's fortress Europe. So he was in command of the All-Americans, the Screaming Eagles, and the Red Devils of the British 1st Airborne. It was the most dangerous military mission ever conceived on that scale to that time, dropping tens of thousands of young people behind enemy lines in the dead of night, knowing that before the first shot would be fired, 30% of them would be casualties. And Ridgway couldn't sleep. In fact, the night before the attack, he actually fell out of his cot. And the only thing he could do was reach for the Old Testament, to the book of Joshua and the Battle of Jericho, and to God's promise on the eve of what was then the greatest battle in the history of the people of Israel. That promise, I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. And Ridgway repeated that promise to his commanders as they stepped off to their planes on the evening of June 5th, 1944. In 1986, President Reagan awarded General Ridgway the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And he said, "Heroes come when they are needed, but great Americans step forward when courage seems in short supply." That is what Jewish war veterans are about. It is about those great men and women who step forward, no matter what else was happening in the world, no matter what else was happening in the United States. You step forward when courage seems in short supply. So it is an honor for me to once again be with you. I thank you for your kindness to me. As long as I am in this office, you all have what the British would say, first dibs on me. Whenever you need, I thank you. I thank you for what you do, not only for America, but for all humanity, and I thank you.
Secretary, I have a presentation for you. First, I'd like to give you a book. I understand you're a Civil War history buff.
Yes.
A Jewish colonel in the Civil War, which I hope will, unlike government reports, will not remain unread. But it was not on any bestseller list.
Thank you. Thank you
One.
so much.
And a we're getting to be that age. A contribution has been made to the National Museum of American Jewish Military History, which you toured, in your honor as Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs of the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Oh, yes. Let me pull that in.
Thank you.
So much. Go this way.
Cake. All right. Don't forget the New Orleans cake.
Oh,
I must take the cake with you.
thank you, sir. Thank you. I'll take that. Thank you all very much.
Hasn't
Now,
yeah.
now I can, whether he leaves the room.
Just wait till he leaves.
Is he left?
He is
Is Entourage left also?
gone.
Okay, everyone, settle down. What? Everyone settle down. Now it's time for the beginning of the meeting of the National Executive Committee, February 2020. What?
They can't hear you. You're going to have to talk into
Can't
the
hear me.
microphone. No, they can't hear you.
Okay, I can hear. That's okay. Will the officer of the day please open the altar?
Please stand.
Thank you. Thank you. Salute colors. To the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Down. Do we have a chaplain?
Peter's our chaplain.
Good Shabbos. Stay covered. Dear God, we call upon you to inspire us in these proceedings as we gather together once of our 2 annual meetings. Inspire us to honor our ancestors and to do good in your name and to fulfill our mitzvahs as Americans and as obligants under Torah mitzvot. In this we ask in your name, Amen.
Amen. Alan? I'd like to call upon Alan Paley to read the roll call.
In the interest of time, we're not going to call titles. When I call your name, please signify by saying "I" here. Oh, you want to? Okay. Sheldon, introduce Sandra first. Oh, okay.
A little change. What? A little change. The national president, Sandra Cantor, will now give her greetings. Sandra?
Thank you very much. I bring greetings from the National Ladies Auxiliary. We are so proud to be affiliated with the Jewish War Veterans. It is my hope that the ladies can continue to assist and help our comrades in whatever endeavors y'all undertake. We also would like to say we appreciate you. We appreciate what you do for the veterans and the veteran community, and we're glad to participate with you in that endeavor. And I'm sure that everyone here is a member of the museum, but in case you're not, just know that that is your legacy, and hopefully you can continue in that legacy and be part of the museum. Thank you so much. Enjoy your meeting.
Thank you.
Back to the roll. Harvey Weiner.
Here.
Peter Nikitas. Here. Alan Paley is here. Nelson Melitz.
Here.
Norman Schnitzer. Not here. Sidney Goldman. Larry Jasper. Ainsley Ferdy. Judge Paul Ribner. Nathan Goldberg. Joseph Zoldan. Samuel Greenberg. Edwin Goldwasser. Jack Litz. Herbert Greff. Warren Dolney. David Himes. Michael Berman. Monroe Mayer. Louis Abramson. David Magidson. Norman Rosenshine.
Here.
Lawrence Schulman. Ira Novoselsky.
Absent.
Stephen Zeitz. Alan Falk. Sheldon Oren. Dr. Robert Picard. Maxwell Cologne. Jerome Blum. Carl Singer. Paul Warner. Barry Schneider. Matthew Millen. Darren Selnick. Matt Cologne is here. Martin Pear. Gerald Bagish. Frederick Gross. Leonard Markovitz. Larry Jasper is here. Arthur Greenwald. Richard Rosenzweig. Joshua Ox. Michael Corbett. Howard Goldstein. Robert Nussbaum. Erwin Burtnick. Sheldon Goldberg. Jeffrey Blonder. David Westerman. Barry Lashinsky. Edward Hirsch. Lawrence Berry. Monroe Ginsburg. Lou Michaels.
Here, sir.
Jerry Roth. Jeffrey Sohn.
Here.
Sid Lichter.
Here.
Albert Adler.
Here.
Selena Kantowitz. Jack Small.
Here.
Jack Holzman.
Here.
Gerald Alperstein.
Here.
Edward Barrow.
Here.
Sidney Goldberg.
Here.
Michael Menschel. Bernard Storch. David Zwerin. Stephen Markman. Larry Pollock. Sanford Silver. Alan Abramson. Jonathan Sherman. Ira Fleischer. Robert Max. Gavin Ellman. Murray Baker. Rochelle Heyman. Scott Stevens. Arthur Kaplan. Kenneth Sherwin. David Myers. Kim Queen. Mr. Chairman, the roll has been called.
Thank you. Alan. Here. There he is.
He's here.
I'd like to call upon Nelson Melitz now. He has a few words to say.
Come up here, you have to wear a towel.
Next slide. We have a little bit of a change in the format for this meeting as well as some others. We leave nobody behind. Since the founding of this great republic, there's been 1,600,000 killed in action people wearing the uniform that we've worn. Just during the 20th and 21st century, it's approximately 630,000 of our brothers and sisters have been killed in action. During the last war, where there were POWs, MIAs, the Vietnam War, since as of yesterday, 1,241 are POWs or MIAs just from Vietnam. I have the honor of reading the poem of the POWs, MIAs. Those who have served and those currently serving the uniformed services of the United States are ever mindful that the sweetness of enduring peace always has been tainted by the bittersweet of personal sacrifice. We are compelled to never forget that while we enjoy our daily pleasures, there are others who have endured and may still be enduring the agonies of pain, deprivation, and internment. As we continue our activities this afternoon, we will pause to remember our prisoners of war and missing in action, MIAs, POWs. We call your attention to the small table to my right, which occupies a place of dignity and honor near this podium. It is set for one, symbolizing the fact that our armed forces personnel are missing from our ranks. They are referred to as POWs and MIAs. We call them comrades. They are unable to be with their loved ones and their families today. So we join together to pay our humble tribute to them and to bear witness to their continued absence. The table is small, symbolizing the frailty of one prisoner, alone against his or her oppressors. Remember, the tablecloth is white, symbolic of the purity of intentions to respond to the country's call to arms. Remember, the single rose in the vase signifies the blood that may have shed the sacrifice to encounter the freedom of our beloved United States of America. Remember. This rose also reminds us of our missing comrades' families and friends who keep the faith while awaiting their return. Remember. The red ribbon on the vase represents a red ribbon worn on the lapels of thousands who demand an unyielding determination, a proper accounting of our comrades who are not among us today. Remember, a single slice of lemon on the plate reminds us of the bitter fate. Remember, the salt sprinkled on the table reminds us of the countless fallen tears of families as they wait. Remember, the glass is inverted. They cannot toast with us at this time. Remember, the chair is empty. They are not with us. Remember, the candle is reminiscent of the light of hope which lives in our hearts to illuminate their way home, away from their captors to the arms of their grateful nation. Remember, the American flag reminds us of the many of them that may never return and have paid the ultimate sacrifice to ensure our freedom. Remember, let us pray to the Supreme Commander that all of our comrades will soon be back within our ranks. Let us remember and never forget their sacrifice. May God forever watch over them and protect them and their families. May God bless the United States of America. Remember.
Thank you, Nelson. I'll assume that everyone read the minutes? Yes? Can I have a motion to accept the minutes? Seconded? All approve? Aye. Approved. Now it's my turn to have a few comments, and they will be very few. There'll be one, really. I go to shul pretty much on a regular basis on Shabbos now. I didn't do that for many years. But now I found that I live in a pretty heavy Jewish community. I lived in a heavier one before, Muncie, which is known. Now I live in Teaneck. And every Shabbos morning when I go to shul, I get very upset because in front of every shul, there's a police car. Whether it's the sheriff, the county police, or a state trooper, they're there. I like to think that this is America and that we don't have to have this kind of stuff. There's freedom of worship in this country. It's written into the Constitution, and there's no reason for this. And even George Washington wrote a letter to the synagogue in Truro mentioning the freedom that Jews should have in this country. So I hope that we can all do our best if we go to shul or when we go to shul to also protect and do what we can to make our houses of worship safe. Thank you. I now like to call upon the report of the National Commander, Harvey Weiner.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, NEC members, Chairman of the Coordinating Committee, past National Commanders, JWV members, comrades in arms, and friends. This is my 7th report to the NEC in February, but my first as National Commander. I've really had an active almost 6 months, and I am pleased to report that being National Commander is not a full-time job, although it helps. And it seems that way. You do not have to retire to be National Commander, although that helps too. I'd like to focus my report on the actual and potential new initiatives, only some of which I personally initiated. First, I wanted to educate the potential new National Commander on what to expect in running for and in being National Commander. Last year, I asked the past National Commander, Dr. Barry Schneider, to create a timeline for both the election campaign and for being National Commander, and he did so. With that as an aid in my own experience, I've been mentoring the potential new National Commander, Jeff Sachs from Illinois, on what to do and what to expect. I hope, certainly by the end of this year, to have something in writing, a sort of a complete National Commander's how-to handbook. We'll see. I've also been mentoring, to a very, very limited extent, the new and very able National Judge Advocate, who really has hit the ground running and was recently named one of the Minnesota Lawyers of the Year. Second, we have a new, very vibrant, very active publicity committee led by Howard Goldstein, which was the result of an amendment to our bylaws last August. They have met several times telephonically and are doing an amazing job. We have a brand new publicist on staff, Kara Reinkoff, and all this bodes well for sending out our message as never before. Third, one of my major goals mentioned in my inauguration speech was to help solidify the bond between National and the departments and the posts. To that end, I intend to visit 6 of the 7 departments that were not visited last year by the ubiquitous Dr. Barry. So far, I have visited Maryland twice, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and I have appointments to visit Virginia, Nevada, and Ohio. That means, if I do all that, it means between Dr. Barry and myself, we'll have visited every single department in a 2-year period. That is, as my understanding, never been done before. And I got to apologize in advance for not visiting at least one and perhaps more of the, quote, usual departments because of conflicts. But I feel that visits to seemingly neglected departments are my first priority. And I'm afraid that I won't be visiting Delaware, although I'm trying. It's inactive, so perhaps a phone call with the commander is all that I really can do. Now, Irwin, the Maryland Department commander, told me that no national commander had visited Maryland for 23 years, although it ain't far away. Although Ira Novoselsky, past national commander, tells me that 10 years ago he visited the Naval Academy with Irwin to give a Kiddush cups to the Jewish graduates at graduation. I've also visited the departments of Minnesota, Massachusetts, and Florida, with future appointments so far for New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York. And I've been to D.C. 4 times, including this week. But I'll never get the mileage, I think, that Dr. Barry got last year, but I'm going to try. Fourth, I've been shown the JWV cap locally in my home state of Massachusetts at 19 separate events so far, at which I've either attended with cap on or spoke at or both. And, you know, Saturday is out, so that's pretty good if you eliminate Saturday. The word is out in Massachusetts that I'm national commander, and I've been asked to speak at or attend numerous events, and I've been given a lot of coffee mugs. At any event I attend, I work the room in an attempt to recruit new members, as Herb and others can attribute that I am a room worker. Fifth, I attended the Israeli Embassy Rosh Hashanah reception here in Washington, which I understand was the first time a national commander had attended that event. Of course, it may have been the first time that event happened. I met two Jewish congresspersons who are veterans, and I hope we can use them in the future for JWV purposes. I try to recruit them for membership, but no luck so far. Sixth, I intend to visit lone posts, either by FaceTime or telephone or perhaps even in person. And with the help of Christy, I hope to have calls with those lonely post commanders that she recommends that I do. I have personally visited the New Orthodox Post in Silver Springs, Maryland, at their dining in. I had a telephone call, and eventually Barry and I are going to visit the 93-year-old commander, and he's the youngest commander there, in that JWV post, 99 in Portland, Maine, which is defunct. He tells me that before he's thrilled to get a phone call, and he's poured out his heart. He tells me that before he dies, he wants to have built 2 JWV stones at the 2 main cemeteries where Maine Jewish veterans are buried. And I'm going to try like heck to see if that will happen. He needs money, but we'll see what we can do, and I'm certainly personally going to give money on that. Seventh, I want to help implement a strategic plan, which was a suggestion of Dr. Barry and others. We have a committee of 6 members, which has geographic and, more important, age diversity. We met yesterday, and it looks like that committee is going to be hyperactive. Eighth, I've expanded the London trip, which Ajax, A-G-E-X, not Ajax the foaming cleanser, Ajax, the British Jewish Veterans Group, had reduced from 2 days to 1 day by me adding a visit to the Berkeley Street Synagogue 1 day before the parade and wreath laying, and a visit with a Jewish ex-member of Parliament at the London Jewish Museum on the next afternoon after the briefing at the exquisite American Embassy. These 2 additions were arranged by Rabbi Mark Weiner, whom I appointed as one of the national chaplains. Rabbi Weiner has been tasked with writing an article in each issue of the Jewish Veterans. You read his first and the last issue, and he participated in my visit to the Department of Florida. The question arises, which has to be discussed internally, as to whether or not to continue the expansive London trip. I would vote yes, but it's a close question, and we should evaluate it each year. For example, they no longer, not only is it one day rather than two, they no longer pay for transportation to and from the airport, and that's an extra $200. This year, Brussels was not available to be combined with London, and that makes a real difference as to whether we should do it. But I hope to go there at a later time, so we'll see. That's shape from NATO. Ninth, the Israeli trip is scheduled for next month, and I have two recommendations as to that. First, it should not be the primary burden of the national commander to recruit members. This was not how it was in the past. In part, for some reason that is beyond my limited comprehension, it couldn't be advertised this year in the Jewish Veteran, and therefore many of the department commanders had not heard of it when we contacted them. My Chief of Staff, Sir Barry Lashinsky, and I called and or emailed every single department commander, some of whom didn't even know there was an Israeli trip. So as of today, Little Massachusetts, in size as well as in population, has more people signed up than the remainder of the country. Last year, Texas had more people signed up than the rest of the country. That is not the way it should be. It's a national trip. We even tried to pair it this year with Sarel, the Sarel experience, whereby participants could spend an extra week or two, or three if they wanted, in Israel, working with the Israeli Defense Forces. This is a program that I've done, that Sir Barry Lashinsky has done, that Nelson Melitz has done. Unfortunately, we had no takers, zero. My second recommendation is that we not have the trip every year. Times have changed, and the pool of JWV members willing and able to go is considerably less than it is in the past. 10th, another proposed innovation is my hope to visit Jewish troops in Afghanistan for the first Seder at Pesach with my Chief of Staff, my Quartermaster, and perhaps others. Rabbi Irv Elson is assisting us in authorizing this initiative, but recent events in the Middle East may prevent it. As of yesterday, it is not a go. I think we would be the first JWV group, perhaps even the first veterans group, to ever visit a combat zone, and this would be a great thing for the JWV for a variety of reasons: publicity, recruiting young soldiers right in the field. We wouldn't do it that callously, but think of the positive implications of doing that. If not now, when? Perhaps if we can't do it this year, it'll be next year. 11th, just after I became national commander, I was asked if the JWV would be willing to submit an amicus brief in the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial case involving a veteran who was incarcerated for failure to pay domestic support payments. He did not have a lawyer in this, not a criminal suit, it's a civil suit, and the issue is whether he is entitled to one where there is a risk of jail time, like in criminal cases. This area affects veterans disproportionately because they have unique domestic relations issues due to deployment, failure to adjust, after deployment, PTSD, moving from base to base every few years, and homelessness, among other reasons. We did submit an amicus brief, which my firm and I wrote, arguing that if there is a risk of jail time, the veteran is entitled to counsel. The case was argued. last month, and I intend to write an article in the Jewish Veterans after a decision is made, which will probably be in April. Finally, I want to thank my officers, particularly my Chief of Staff, if you saw his presentation today as membership chair, be in awe of Sir Barry Lashinsky. Now, Sir Barry Lashinsky was knighted by the King and Queen of the St. Paul Winter Carnival when we visited the Minnesota Department. And I call him Sir Barry to distinguish him from last year's national commander, whom I refer to as Dr. Barry. By the way, the King and Queen of the St. Paul Winter Carnival do not have the cachet of someone, say, like Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom, who actually really knighted one of our national chaplains, Sir Mark Weiner, several years ago. I want to thank the special advisor to the national commander, past national commander Ira Novoselsky, who still cannot be here, although he's expected to come to Jacksonville, for his constant counsel and advice. He is my go-to person on how to do this job. I know I want to give a shout out to you, with Sandra not being here, as to Auxiliary President Sandy Cantor, whom I've been so far to D.C., Florida, Massachusetts, and other places. She is a dynamo, and she's a pleasure, an absolute pleasure to be with. And I'm going to go over to talk to the auxiliary after this, and they really should be proud of her. She is doing a fantastic job, and it's fun to be with. So that's great. I want to thank Christy Turner, who guides me. I want to thank Christy Turner, who guides me, Norman Rosenshine, who restrains me, Executive Director Colonel Herb Rosenbleeth, who encourages me, and the entire JWV staff who support me. But the best is yet to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander. Now I'd like to call upon the President of the Museum, Larry Shulman.
Thank you. I would like to have all of you attend tomorrow morning so that I will be able to give my report on the museum. Look forward to having a full house. Thank you very much.
We'll look forward to that, Lawrence. Now I'd like to introduce our National Executive Director, Herb Rosenbleeth.
Good afternoon, fellow members of the Jewish War Veterans. I want to welcome Colonel Erwin Burtnick. Erwin has been not well for some months. Erwin, it's great to see you. I wish you good health. I've had the pleasure, or we have had the pleasure, so far this NEC, of going to Harold Goldstein's terrific session, of going to Alan Paley and Steve Krantz' great session, Barry Lashinsky's outstanding session, and we've had the Secretary of the VA. So we're having a good NEC meeting. And my appreciation to every one of you who's here. I know I've been saying that every time recently, but I mean it sincerely. You make it work. You who are dedicated to the Jewish war veterans, dedicated enough to come here in the dead of winter to Washington, D.C. It's costly, it's cold, and you're here to be with us. And I really, really appreciate each and every one of you. Give yourselves a hand, please. Kudos to our national commander, Harvey Weiner. He sang hello to the ladies. Yes, as Harvey said, he can work a crowd. Harvey's terrific working a crowd. He gets around and around and around and greets them all. And kudos to our museum president, PNC Larry Schulman. Larry, thank you for all you do. I thank you, those of you who participated in Capitol Action Day. And a special shout out to, blanking on his name, to Jack Holzman from New York. There's Jack. And why do I say that? Because Jack got Congressman Lee Zeldin to introduce the bill that we need to straighten out the membership issue. As you know, our charter requires us to only take people who served during wartime. And wartime is defined in our Constitution and bylaws, certain dates. If you served but not on those dates, you can't join the Jewish war veterans. This legislation will change that. The president has said that we've been at war since December 7, 1941, that it's all wartime. And with this legislation, we will be able to take any Jewish person who has served since December 7, 1941. And that should make things a lot better for us. Besides Jack Holzman getting Lee Zeldin to work on this legislation, David Magidson in Florida have got Senator Rubio working on it, and there may have even been others. But it means that in a very near future, we'll have this bill, we'll have a number, and we look forward to getting it passed, hopefully by convention. A shout out to my friend David Himes. David Himes is now 102 years old, terrific guy. Jeff Sachs told me he's seen David and that David looks good. I'm really glad to hear that. So let's give a big hand to David Himes. Pardon? He still drives. David Himes, 102, he still drives. And a shout out to the senior PNC, which I always do, that being Ainsley Ferdy. Shout out to Peter Nikitas. Peter is following in the footsteps of people like David Magidson, Monty Mayer, Alan Falk, Harvey Weiner, Michael Berman, and has taken on the very difficult task of being our judge advocate. And he also is our acting chaplain for this NEC meeting. Thank you, Peter. I want to recognize 3 very senior enlisted personnel. Colonels are a dime a dozen, but senior enlisted personnel are really, really special, and we've got 3 of them. We have Sergeant Major Larry Jasper from Florida, Sergeant Major Chuck Greenberg from New Jersey, and Master Sergeant Selena Kanowitz. It's wonderful to recognize them. How about let's give a hand to each department commander. And a hand to each committee chairman. There's people that make it work. Okay, I have to read the policy committee results. And the first policy committee item that was approved is to support the memorial honoring Gulf War veterans. Do I have a motion to approve it? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, we look forward one day to seeing a memorial on the mall, or in vicinity of the mall, honoring the Gulf War veterans. And Jeff, exactly where is that going to go?
It's going to be on the National Mall, not far from the Vietnam Veterans Memorial by the Lincoln Memorial.
Okay, thank you. Next was a policy about the JWV hats, the caps, these. And it pertained to the number of stars that would go on the caps of the leadership. So the national commander remains a four-star. The vice commander, I like deputy commander. Is that, it's going to be vice commander, though. The vice commander, is that right, Norman? It's a vice commander. Vice commander will be a 3-star. But his wife's going to call him deputy commander, no matter what you call him. The chaplain will be a 2-star. And the chief of staff will be a 1-star. Okay. The judge advocate's also a 2-star, right, okay, that's right. Okay. All right. Call the motion. Any discussion, any further discussion? Michael?
I believe there was a discussion on the hat after the person completes their term. Is that coming up as a separate resolution?
No.
Past national commander's hat will be only past national commander with no date on.
But with 4 stars.
Yes, the 4 stars remain on that.
Question to the chairman. At the completion of a chief of staff term, does he have the, or she have the right to continue to wear a hat with the star?
Yes.
Without a date or with a date? Without a date. Let's go on.
Without a date.
Without a date. All right. Call the question. Do I have a motion? Second? Discussion? Is it retroactive? I don't. No. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Passes. All right, and the third item is asking us to support House Resolution 5605, which prescribes that there will be joint research on PTSD between the U.S. and Israel. Move the question. So moved. Second? All in favor? Opposed? It passes. So those are the items that were passed.
There were no other items.
And there were no other items. That concludes the policy committee part. I want to close with a shout out for the staff. A big shout out. Let me name each one of our NEC staff. Greg Byrne. I don't see Greg. Christy Turner. Mike Rugel. Julia Lasher. Harrison Heller. Ben Kane. Kara Rinkoff. And as always, I count past National Commander Ed Goldwasser. And I count past National Commander Norman Rosenshine. Again, thank you, one and all, everyone, for being with us.
Now I'd like to introduce our National Judge Advocate, Peter Nikitas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Commander Harvey Weiner, Coordinating Committee Chair Norm Rosensheim. I stand before you to make my first report as National Judge Advocate. I commenced service in this position officially on 30 October 2019 with the announcement by National Commander Harvey Weiner at the Jewish War Veterans Department of Minnesota annual membership dinner in St. Paul. I accept this honor and increased obligation with faith and confidence that I will serve the JWV and show that we Jewish war veterans have the will and the means to fulfill our civic duties to this nation and our obligations to fulfill Torah mitzvot with equal fervor. I benefit from the mentorship and guidance of National Commander Harvey Weiner, PNC and Coordinating Committee Chair Norm Rosensheim, each and every past National Commander, more especially those who served as National Judge Advocates, Executive Director Herb Rosenbleef, and the assistance of the entire JWV staff. I explained the basic job descriptions of the National Judge Advocate to family, friends, veterans, professionals, and acquaintances back home. I assured them first that I need not move to Washington for this position. Interestingly, Minnesota Commissioner of Veterans Affairs Larry Herkey was quite glad to hear that. I drew an analogy for them by saying that if the JWV were a government, the National Judge Advocate serves as the Attorney General. So I proceed. This affirms the first point that our National Commander Harvey Weiner made in his final National Judge Advocate report. The National Judge Advocate is not the attorney for individual JWV members or posts, departments, or councils. Rather, the National Judge Advocate is the attorney for the national organization, answering to and taking direction from the NEC. Each post, department, and council has its own judge advocate. I encourage you to use them and consult the articles and bylaws as you need to do the job. Let me give you some examples of work that's ensued since last October, where we can all benefit simply by looking at our articles and bylaws. One post endeavored to court-martial a member. The member did not consent to waiver of jurisdiction by the national echelon. The action stopped in its tracks. One other department initially proposed wholesale new elections throughout the department upon the promotion of one member, which left an opening in its ranks, and which opened up another office for election. Simply applying the bylaws for special elections limited the special election to the two openings, not a wholesale general election. The bylaws worked here as they were designed. Okay. The first 4 months in this service included work renewing and recommending approval for plumbing, event insurance, and software contracts for Jewish War Veterans headquarters that had come due. I commend Greg Byrne for timely recommendations and analyses from the ground level, or deck plates, if you will, to conduct this work. Thank you, Greg. The National Judge Advocate work includes probate work. Jewish War Veterans this month completed the work it needed to do to gain benefits from an estate probated in Israel. The gift to the museum, resulting from the sale of the decedent's property, real property in Israel, will be significant. The transaction will be complete with the monies dispersed in time for the National Convention. Again, thank you, Harvey. Thank you, Greg. Harvey Weiner, as then National Judge Advocate, initiated the Wills for Veterans program within the Massachusetts Department, with templates for widespread use by other echelons outside Massachusetts. The offer for sharing templates stands. Another continuing program from my predecessor is the Veterans Mediation Training Program with an available syllabus free for the asking. Talk to me about it. As we went over in Commander Harvey Weiner's report, the National Judge Advocate can be a player nationally by being part of big-time, as you will, litigation. In the past 6 years, the Jewish war veterans took a role in 3 War Memorial Cross cases, the transgender in the military case, the firing of a corrupt VA employee case, and a veterans benefits case. The Supreme Court ruled against the side that JWV took in the Bladensburg Cross case. Nonetheless, comments at oral argument and 3 opinions from the court, 2 on the majority and Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's dissent, cited the Jewish war veterans' friend of the court brief. As National Commander Harvey Weiner wrote in his 2019 convention report, the National Judge Advocate can spread the message of the JWV nationally, particularly the message that Jews served and continue to serve in the armed forces of the United States. The message required local and national work. It requires local and national work. An opportunity to prove this point emerged. A post in the West requested guidance on the issue of the JWV's involvement in multiple veterans organizations' activities on Saturdays. The Post also inquired whether it would be proper for other veterans organizations to carry the JWV flags in the Post's absence. Our comrades posted serious questions with complete sincerity. On behalf of the JWV, I advised the Post to refrain from organized activities on Shabbat and not to ask anyone to carry our flags for us. My analysis follows. Number 1, God created Shabbat for everybody. More especially, Shabbat saved us Jews and saves us Jews over and over again. The Jewish War Veterans as an organization shows our ability to fulfill our civic obligations as Americans while we perform acts of Torah mitzvot with equal fervor. Now, not every secular celebration noted takes place on Saturday. The general rule of the JWV is to refrain from activities on Shabbat. Considering that in a milieu of actual or perceived increased anti-Semitism, we need to act more fervently as Jews and Americans at the same time, and seeing no direct threats to individual Jews in the location of this post, I saw no reason to depart from the general rule of the JWV. By keeping Shabbat and staying out of these events on Shabbat, we put the Jewish into Jewish war veterans. Otherwise, we're not Jewish war veterans. As to the flags, we don't need anyone to carry our flags anywhere. As a practical matter, I urge JWV officers to work with fellow veterans organizations to schedule events that do not interfere with Shabbat or other holy days. Events such as annual parades may alternate between Saturday one year and Sunday the next. I encourage you to work with the local veterans organizations, and things will work out smoothly, just sitting down to talk with them. Several years back, for example, Memorial Day fell on Shavuot. The JWV refrained from observances on Memorial Day as a national organization. Jewish communities, including Minnesota's, for example, deferred the usual Memorial Day events including the reading of names, to the following Sunday. I've also taken it on myself to take notes during NEC events as a record, rule, and guide for the NEC, and to attend the will of the Coordinating Committee Chair and National Commander to ensure full, fair, and efficient meetings with decent regard for parliamentary procedure as modified by the JWV. I add a small footnote before I conclude. Our National Commander, Harvey Weiner, has addressed Barry Lashinsky, our Chief of Staff, as Sir Barry, by virtue of his being knighted by the senior royalty of the Winter Carnival of St. Paul, Minnesota. Please note that the same royalty knighted Barry Schneider when he presided over our installation in St. Paul in 2019. For your consideration, we may call Barry Schneider Sir Barry the First, and Barry Lashinsky Sir Barry the Junior. I leave it up to you.
We can be honest, just call me BS.
Well, with that, this marks the first report in my service as National Judge Advocate. I look forward to more service with great optimism for our bands of brothers and sisters and the JWV. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to call upon Norman Rosenshine, Chairman of the National Coordinating Committee.
You want it? Thank you, Shelley. I greatly appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Good Shabbos, everyone. We have about 2 or 3 hours until that starts. As chairman of the coordinating committee, my job is to make sure that the museum and JWV work together. And I can thankfully say that we've had no issues. The staff has been cooperative and actually takes care of both sides and handles the job of both sides as necessary. As chairman of the foundation, I will tell you that the 3 organizations are totally independent from I'm sorry, that is not true. We are independent from the museum. The foundation is not independent from JWV. To be a member of the foundation, you must be a member of JWV. And a little rundown on the foundation so everyone is aware. The foundation was set up mainly as a foundation to support veterans organizations, and primarily the Jewish war veterans. The reason for it is most people do not understand that war veterans groups, such as the Jewish war veterans, are tax deductible. It's too difficult to explain to the Exxon Corporation that when we ask for money, you can give it directly to them because we are a C4. C4s on the general statement are not tax exempt. Jewish war veterans and all war veterans who are C4s are tax exempt, and that's why we maintain that category. And we set up the foundation so we can get donations into it without going through a lengthy explanation between the difference between a C3 and a C4. The membership of the foundation is set up of advisors, of which 3 of them are always the last past 3 national commanders. And Barry, you are a member of the foundation. Yes. You went on in January. Yes. That's why I'm telling you. And the policy of keeping past national commanders on will stay that way, and Barry will be on for 3 years. Right. The minutes will go out to all past national commanders who are members of it. They're not written yet, so that's why you didn't get them. They're in the process of being done and taken care of. Any questions to the foundations, I'd be more than glad to answer. The rest of the organization is running smoothly. We've had no great arguments, no great challenges. Unfortunately, no great amount of money has come in. And generally speaking, when large sums of money comes in, it goes into the foundation because we can put it wherever we want. The JWV also gets donations, and they go directly to the JWV, and the museum gets donations, and it goes directly to the museum. So unless somebody has a question, I'm not going to stand up here and talk and answer anything. So are there any questions? Thank you all.
Thank you, Norman. Now I'd like to introduce David Magnuson, who will discuss a few items, especially the 2021 celebration. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheldon.
You're welcome.
As we say in South Florida, happy Valentine's Day, y'all. Of course, we don't talk like that in South Florida. You got to go up to Gainesville or northern Florida to start talking like that. Here for basically two issues, and let me talk to all of you about it because it's of interest to you. 5 years ago, 4 years ago, there was an issue of we're going to be in charge 2021. It's our 125th anniversary. We had the 125 years ago. Should we raise the dues $3 a piece over 5 years, et cetera, et cetera? And Bob Picard and I said no, and the powers that be said, go ahead and do what you can do. So we were able to raise money, and right now, with Barry Schneider's help, Barry's getting a lot of mention today, but he deserves it. With those people's help, right now we're sitting at about a little less than $67,000. And we should need about, well, let me give you an idea. So we're sitting with $67,000 at this particular point. Now what's happened in the last couple of months is people have discovered, this group has discovered through the staff, that the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which is at Arlington, on Veterans Day 2021, the same time we have our 125th anniversary, will have their 100th anniversary. So now the question is, how does that diminish what we do? And I can't tell you today what the answer to that is, because I don't know. But it's my understanding and what I've been told that we're still in charge. We will be allowed to speak as the group in charge. In other words, all the veterans organizations, last year was the Catholic War Veterans, the year before it was someone else. I don't know what it is this year. Well, who is it this year, Norman? The Paralyzed Veterans. It's our turn in 2021. I'm sorry? The Blinded Veterans. Thanks, Herb. It's the Blinded Veterans. Anyway, it's our turn in 2021. And we intend to fulfill our role and also get the covet that the Jewish war veterans deserve. Now, it's also my understanding that they will be, meaning whatever organization is in charge of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, you can feel World War I, 100 years later, a little bit after that, that's when they were buried. What will happen is they will have all kinds of activities between whatever and 2021, November 11th, which is on a Thursday. And I promise the people, if we can hold, we're in charge of also the luncheon at Fort Myer. I was told somebody there's no S on Fort Myer, like there's no S on Silver Springs. If you're from Maryland, y'all, there's only one spring in Silver Spring here. I'm just saying, you got it. So, but what I'm saying is, as far as that is concerned, what we intend to do is, if we have to, the luncheon will be us, and it will be maybe $20,000 to $40,000. That will leave over money, plus we want more money, because I had promised everybody that would be giving that we will have some type of affair, and perhaps that Wednesday night. In other words, Thursday is the tomb. Thursday is the veterans with the president, hopefully, or whatever, at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Thursday at Fort Myer for lunch. They will have something. Some of us will be able to go there, probably not everybody, but certainly Wednesday night, those who have participated in raising the money, we will have some type of dinner, cocktail hour, honoring, fundraiser. We will do something between now and 2021 so that people can come in Wednesday. They can go to that affair. They can go to the veterans to honor us for the 125th. and then they can also then go to the luncheon and then leave. That's what we intend to do, even though we've been given the curveball of which we didn't realize. So those that can give, keep giving money, please do. We will ask you. The money will not be wasted, as you can tell. It will honor the people that have given. It will honor our organization, and it's important. Can you imagine? We go to Capitol Hill and we say, the Jewish War Veterans are the oldest veterans organization in the United States. You can put this temporary honor, but whatever it is, I know there's the Order of Cincinnatus and the rest with Washington. They've died out, but there's still us. That's what they say about the Jewish people, don't they? Don't they? Think about that. When we celebrate whatever year this is, 5,000, I was 77 or 80 last year, I don't remember. So what I'm saying is 81 is coming up. So that's the first aspect of that I need to talk to you about. So you've got a feel for what's going on. And if you've got some money that you can contribute, please do, because I don't want to be able to tell you you can't come to the affair because other people have given money. And I don't care if you give a nickel, $1, $18, you're entitled. It's a question of participating. And if you choose not to participate, then you don't deserve to come. That's all. Second one, my synagogue. I belong to a synagogue in Coral Gables, Florida, and we have about 670 families. We're Reform. And what we do on Veterans Day, on Memorial Day, but also on Veterans Day, is we begin with, the rabbis have bought into this. And what the rabbis do, we have two females, the chief, the assistant rabbi. What they do is during the service, they ask all veterans to please stand. And the veterans stand. I'll come back to that. Just remember what I said, the veterans stand. Then they ask those of you that have mothers or fathers that have served in the military, please stand. And those of you that have brothers and sisters in the military, please stand. And finally, they say, basically, those of you that have dear friends that have served in the military, please stand. And now you have 2/3 of the congregation standing when most people don't believe that Jews have ever served in the military of the United States of America, which is what a part of our role is. Our role, that I believe, is to tell Jews the Jews have served in the military of the United States, some honorably, all honorably, and some heroically. And to say the same thing to non-Jews. The Jews have served in the military of the United States honorably and some heroically. That, I believe, is the true mission of what we stand for, at least what I believe. So then you've got all these people standing. So now I can identify who are the veterans in my synagogue, because they're standing. Remember what I said. They're now standing, and I'll come back to that. Okay, then what we do is we scroll down the pictures when we do Kaddish. The rabbis read the names, but scroll down and have pictures of all the about 60 kids, men and women, black and white, whatever. And everybody's so surprised at everything about it, women, blacks, they're surprised that they served, they're Jewish, they served, and they died in Afghanistan and Iraq. And they understand and they feel for the first time what's going on in Afghanistan, because it's so far from them and it's been going on for so long that it's no longer human. You don't feel that way anymore. And so what we've done, just think of the mitzvah of this, okay? What I'm suggesting and what I've been able to get approved is the following. And in the sense of, do me a favor, those of you that have attended a synagogue, and this is not to tell the people that haven't, I could care less, but those of you that have attended a synagogue for any reason in the last year, do me a favor and raise your hand. Okay, take a look at the body. You can put your hands down. Thank you. I don't mean to embarrass anybody. But the point of it is, and what we intend to do between now and Memorial Day, and Sir Barry is going along with this, what we intend to do is when we go, if each one of you, and there's some rabbis that don't want to be involved in this. They don't believe in the military, they don't believe in wars, God knows whatever else, but you are a congregant or a visitor, and you have power in a sense over them. And don't let them push you around. What we want is we want to honor our veterans on Memorial Day and on Veterans Day. That's what we want. And you all have attended synagogues. Now, what we want to do is when these veterans stand up, we're wearing our caps. I want each one of you, if you can, to attend your service at whatever synagogue you go to that day and with a cap on to show the hat. So people will look at you. And the other people that are veterans won't have a cap. And they, by and large, what happens is it's a great time to go up to them after the service and give them an application for the Jewish War Veterans of the United States of America. There is no reason that each one of you should not do that. What we have to do, there isn't, because now you've identified who are Jewish people, they're getting honored, they've served in the military, and all you got to do is get an application, and what you need to do is make sure that application is completed and gotten to the national. That's what you have to do. It doesn't take that much work. It doesn't cost us anything other than the applications. And what staff needs to do, staff needs to get in the hands of the departments so they can go down to the posts, the applications. So that's what I'm asking each and every one of you to be able to do. And we will have the staff work with the departments and work with the posts as best they can and say, David, that's me. Here's 10. Here's 10 applications. And I'll have my 10 applications. And I will be there with my hat on Memorial Day this year. And we will ask who are veterans, and they will stand, and I will identify them. And if we get 20 or 40 or 60 new members, what did we lose? It's a double mitzvah. Number one is we get to identify who are veterans, and we're trying to get members. We lose nothing by it, other than your time going to one service on a Friday night or a Saturday morning, or both. And what do we lose? We're wearing our hats, and people say, who are the veterans and who are the Jewish war veterans? What a wonderful thing. We do both. So unless anybody complains, I'm tasking each and every one of you to please go to service on Memorial Day this year. The staff will have the obligation of getting you the applications and follow up with it. And hopefully I'll report to you either at convention or whatever that we got some members, or people will be able to tell their stories. But it doesn't cost anything. I'm not asking you for any money. I'm asking for just your time in attending services, please. There's nothing wrong with that. So I thank you for your attention, and let's have a good convention.
Now we'll go to the next items on the agenda, actions relative to charters, names, and those who submitted, please go to the microphone. Alan?
Mr. Chairman, there's a proposal to merge the Alvin Rose Post 778 and the Murray Solomon Brown Post 243. However, there's a correction. The name of the merged post will be the Murray Solomon Brown Post 243.
Okay. All the books and records
Yes, they've been consolidated.
and the money?
Same with money.
Okay.
Everything's been accounted for.
Okay. Everyone in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passed. Second one, Alan.
All right, the second proposal. I'm sorry? It's on. Okay. The second proposal is to merge Post 177 and Post 730, not 703, into Post 606. The name of the merged post will be the Franz Blau Kretschmann Polisok Post 606. The funds have been accounted for and will be turned over upon approval of the merger.
All the books and records,
Yes.
monies,
Yes.
all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
Question, Commander. Question.
Yes.
It's not only this post's name, but I see a post further down. I'm looking at this fellow member's hat. If we put all those names on the hat, it's gonna keep going round and round and round. Can we, I know we wanna honor people, but
You know, I agree with you, but I don't think that's a matter for this right now. I think maybe you should bring it to the policy committee or to some appropriate venue. Erwin Burtnick here.
Burtnick, Commander, Department of Maryland. We are proposing to change the name of the Charles B. Krieger Post 567 to the Krieger Loeb Post 567. Milton Loeb was one of the most active members of that post and sort of regenerated that post into being active.
Have all the books and records,
Everything is,
the monies.
the post will not change at all.
Oh,
It'll be the
okay.
same post with different names.
Okay. Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, Howard Goldstein from Illinois.
Howard Goldstein, Department Commander of Illinois. Proposal is to merge post number 153 into the Perlin Martin Gartenberg Post 800. Name of the post, merged post, will be the Perlin Martin Gartenberg Post 800.
Okay.
Matt.
They've transferred all the books, records, bank accounts.
Pending approval.
Okay, all in favor? Yes?
Sidney Laker, Department of New Jersey. Isn't Post 800 our generalized?
100.
That's Post 100. Yeah, Post 800 is.
All in favor? Anyone opposed? No. Jeff Zone, New Jersey. If he can read all this off.
Good afternoon. Jeff Sohn from the great state of New Jersey. It's home. We are proposing a merger of Post 76, 498, and 741. The merged names post, there's so many names there, I'm not going to read them. However, they're going to be doing business as the Bergen Hudson County Post 76. I submitted the papers in a timely fashion to Christie, and all of the books are going to be done upon approval.
Okay.
At 65 cents a letter, that's a lot of money.
Get a bigger hat.
Correction on the motion. Correction, Michael Bourbon, New Jersey. Treatment is spelled wrong. We need to correct it in the ultimate minutes.
Yeah, it says Fredman on there, correct.
Okay.
Isn't it Fredman? Isn't it J. George Fredman?
Or is it Harvey Friedman?
No, I think it's J.
Friedman.
George Fredman.
You can call me Ray, or you can call me Jay.
Everybody.
Harvey was in 273. Fredman.
We'll correct it. We'll check it out and have it in the minutes as ultimate.
Yeah.
I will call past National Commander Carl Singer, because Carl did the due diligence on this, so I'll get the correct name. And I'll let Christie know. Thank you, sir.
All in favor? Anyone opposed?
Thank you, everybody.
I call upon Steve Markham from Ohio. Not here.
Michael, would you just present it? No, the next one. Would you present the next thing? Because there's somebody from Ohio. I called him. Joe did not answer the phone, so I don't know where he is.
Mr. Commander, Mr. Chairman, we placed before you a proposal to disband the Department of Ohio Cayuga County Council, and we make that proposal before this body.
Okay.
There's nothing left of the county. That's what we're doing. There's nothing left of the county.
Okay. Okay, all in favor? Or anyone opposed? I'll say now I'd like to introduce Sidney Goldberg.
NEC from Department of New York, from Post 50. The Department of New York proposes to change the name of the Post 50 from Abe Cohn Lehman Memorial Post 50 to past National Commander Jerome David Cohn, Abe Cohn Major Philip Lehman Memorial Post number 50, And to answer past National Commander Cologne's question, they will be doing business, it will be Cone Lehman Memorial Post as it is presently. I
Okay.
propose that.
All in favor? Anyone opposed? Jack?
Jack Holzman, Department Commander of New York State, proposed to formally close post 25. The paper says 250, but the zero is wrong. And post 764, they're not in existence anymore.
Neither of them? Did you say neither of them are not in existence?
Right.
Okay. Anybody? Yes.
No, they all passed away. Sorry.
Okay. All in favor? Anyone opposed?
Where's the money? Where's the money?
Now, we're going to have a discussion on proposed changes to the membership application.
Shelley, you have a question?
Yes.
Post 25 is being dissolved, and post 131 in that same district is inactive, and only one post 41 remains. Does the county, does the district automatically cancel out, or do we have to make a motion?
You have to make a motion.
Motion is to dissolve the Western District Council.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Is there any money involved or anything? One?
Wait a minute.
Money or anything?
Yes.
No. Let, get that, Larry.
Yeah, the county has $59, and I assume we're gonna send it to the department. Excuse me. They don't want to start setting precedent of dissolving county councils on the NEC unless it's gone through the department. And I think that that's the appropriate relationship. We've had to do it for several of our councils, and
That's fine. That's,
Okay. Okay.
let's
do it through the. Excuse me, Shelley?
Okay. Yes.
Jerry Alperstein, Department of New York, formerly of New York County Council. With all due respect to past National Commander Ainsley Furdy, that's not how it's actually worked. When New York County Council, excuse me, when New York.
Wait a second, Jerry. Jerry.
no. How you dissolve a county council?
Okay, may I finish, please?
We'll take that up.
I have some historical information on this.
We'll take it, that's beyond the scope, we'll take it later.
Let me, allow me to finish.
Hold on.
When,
Jerry,
please
I
let me
got,
finish, boys. I dealt with this about 2-3 years ago.
hang on, Jerry. The dissolution of a county council right now is beyond the scope of the program. We'll address it afterwards, and the business will be complete by the convention.
May I? Because it already happened with my.
Jerry, enough.
National told us it was dissolved because.
Okay. Thank you, Jerry. As I said before, there'll be proposed changes to the membership application. There'll be a discussion led by Barry Lashinsky and Larry Jasper.
Barry Lashinsky, North Shore Post 220.
Larry Jasper, Post 373, Florida.
I guess I should make it official. Sir Barry Lashinsky, North Shore Post 220. And I want to, as Larry Jasper announced himself, together this is a combined proposal. However, the first correction is it is not a proposal to the membership application. The proposal that we have made was reference Bylaws Article 2, Section 1C, and talk briefly about that, is that paragraph talks about in-service members coming in. Currently, the way it's written, the way we think, is that they get a year free membership. That's not the way it's written. And the way it is written is in and during the fiscal year of such release, provided, however, that such a member be released from active duty after April 1st, per capita shall be paid for such a member for subsequent fiscal law. Now, I have a master's, and I don't understand it. Okay, so we're selling a product that say in-service recruiters, in-service members are getting a year free. In essence, they are not. So, I'm sorry? So our recommendation is, let's change that and make it 2 years as opposed to a year, and our rationale for the year, for 2 years, is if all of us remember when we came off of active duty, you had a lot of things to get together. Your family, your job, your friends, and by the time a year goes by, I hate to say this, but JWV is probably on the lower end. Our recommendation is to give them sufficient time, bring it to a 2-year period, and as opposed to saying the night before Halloween we're going to do this, let's just say 2 years. Larry?
Well, this goes to the bylaws. This is not, this is really not bylaws and constitution. Committee, bylaws and constitution. Committee.
Okay, so that is really a bylaw and constitutional change which we will address at the convention. What we are addressing today is an offshoot of what was discussed at the last convention. Okay, I had spoken with Norman about a proposal to better engage active duty people within this organization. Norman's recommendation was that I speak with Rabbi Elson at the convention because Rabbi Elson has access to all of the active duty chaplains. And when I brought it up, Rabbi Elson said 2 things to me. He said, number 1, the young people are not joiners, and number 2, if you ask them to join, they're going to say, what's in it for me? Well, with all due respect, I said to Rabbi Elson, they are joiners. They joined the military. You want them to join, you need to give them a reason. And we need to give them a reason to join our organization. And if they want to know what's in it for them, I said we can develop a brochure that will tell them what's in it for them. And Norman asked me, are you willing to do it? And I said yes. The membership committee, I presented the brochure that I have developed. And it starts out with, why should I join the JWV? What's in it for me? Connections. And in the brochure, it goes on to explain to them what we, the JWV, can do for them while they're in service and when they leave the service. When people leave the service, they're generally looking for one of 2 things, a job or school. And they need help. They don't have a lot of money usually. So if they leave active duty and we tell them, okay, here's your bill for next year's dues in JWV, they're probably going to throw it away. That's where the 2-year proposal comes in. In addition, I have secured an agreement with the National JCC that they will also get 2 years of free membership in a local JCC, which will be a great benefit since most of them are fit, want to stay fit, there's gyms, etc. And one of the things Norman said to me was, well, what if the member lives 1,000 miles from the nearest post? And my answer was, doesn't matter. Younger people today are very tech savvy. So if a guy lives 1,000 miles away, I can help him via computer find a school, financial aid, a job, etc., and hopefully get them to form a post in that area. So what I'm presenting to you is this brochure which was presented at the membership committee, and if anybody here was not there, I'd be glad to give you a copy. And we're looking for approval so that this can be distributed worldwide. Now, in addition to, okay, Rabbi Elson said he would handle distribution. Since then, I've also been in touch with the Aleph Institute, Rabbi Estrin, down in Miami. Most of the active duty rabbis are Chabad. The Aleph were Orthodox. The Aleph Institute handles them. They also publish a quarterly magazine called the American Jewish or Jewish American Warrior. And they have a large number of both chaplains and members that are Jewish. Now, I have arranged with Rabbi Estrin to go down to their conference a week from this Sunday to address them about membership within this organization. So with the approval of this body, I will bring copies of this brochure, and my intent is between Rabbi Elson and Rabbi Estrin to get copies of this into the hands of every active duty military Jewish chaplain and lay leader to further distribute to all of the active duty military personnel. Okay. And the hope of that is that we will gain more active duty members, and with the incentives of the 2 years in the JCC and free membership here, we'll keep them when they leave. And then after 2 years of involvement in this organization post-active military, they should be indoctrinated enough to want to stay. So if anybody would like a copy, I have it right here. Thank you.
The issue that we had prior that talks about the bylaw, that should really be tabled for the convention and not here. But now that everybody knows this in advance, the 2-year period that we're talking about is as soon as they're released from active duty, the 2-year time starts, not after April or whatever it may be. But that should be tabled and discussed at bylaws.
Thank you. Now it's time for committee reports.
Can I comment on, no?
And first committee is Budget, Alan Paley.
Good afternoon again. I would like to first introduce the members of the Budget Committee. If you're here, please stand up when I call your name. Robert F. Nussbaum, Barry Lashinsky, Elliot Don, Stanley Rolnick, Larry Rosenthal, Erwin Maggot, and David Zwern. I thank you all for your help in preparing the budget. We are discussing today the budget for the fiscal year that begins July 1st, 2020, and ends on June 30th, 2021. And the budget represents JWV's short-term goals based on the revenue received from their normal operations. Long-term financial goals are planned and managed by the Finance Board, which is chaired by Joe Zolden and Erwin Burtnick, and they do not serve as members of the Budget Committee. So in the presentation that you have in front of you or in your folders, we have provided you with the following financial information. Audited results from 2018. Cash basis results from 2019, as the audit has not been finalized yet. Year-to-date 2020 cash received from July 1st through November 30th, or 5 months, the budget for this year, 2020, and then our proposed budget for next year. The committee took the 5 months of actual cash received this year, divided it by 5, and we got a monthly amount. And then in some cases, we projected that monthly amount out for 12 months. This was our starting point for the 2021 budget. In other cases, we looked at trends from 2016 through the first 5 months of this year, and also used input from National and our best judgment. For each line item in the budget, we compared the projected 12 months of results, the cash basis numbers from 2019, the numbers resulting from analysis of the information provided by National, including the 2016 through 2020 trends, and then selected the best reasonable numbers. So, on the revenue side, we have projected revenue at $1,267,500, which is $10,700 more than we budgeted for this current fiscal year. As membership continues on a downward trend, we budgeted based on the actual dues received during 2019. And for certain line items within the fundraising activities area, and also for bequests and contributions, we were extremely conservative in our estimates on the revenue side. On the expense side, we have budgeted $1,425,500, which is $12,700 more than what we budgeted for the current fiscal year. However, although this number is higher, I want to point out that we have added 2 new expense categories beginning in 2021. We added a line item for marketing, and based on our discussions with Howard Goldstein, who will head up our marketing effort, we asked him and he requested that we set a budget at $55,000, which we did. We also added a line for the new National Vice Commander and estimated that expense at $5,000. So if you remove these 2 additional items, which total $60,000, we actually reduced the expense budget by $47,300 as compared to the fiscal 2020 budget. As we have done in the past, we have received every revenue and expense line within the budget and have in many cases offered suggestions on how to either increase certain revenue lines or reduce certain expense lines. Now, I've been told we can't open this up for questions, so if you have any questions, please step to the mic. If I don't have the answer, we will check with National and we will get back to you as soon as we can. David.
Yes, sir. David Magidson, Post 243, Coral Gables, Florida. I've gone through it, and I've asked Alan personally. I didn't need to take up some of the items here because after I saw it. But I want everybody to understand one thing, at least when I look at this budget. I look at this budget and I see dues make up less than 10% of our income, of revenue. And I also see that bequests, people dying, wills, make up over 20%. Understand where our budget is. Can you imagine a budget based upon that? So what I'm saying is we want to continue for many years. So if you can put JWV in your will, in your trust, nobody said do the whole thing. Nobody said whatever, but maybe 10%, maybe 10% of a life insurance policy or something like that. But understand where the economics of this. And somewhere hidden in this is the support of the museum. I don't mean hidden because it's on purpose. It's hidden there because we pay for use of the museum. God knows whatever it is, but the museum really couldn't function without JWV within this budget. So everybody needs to feel for where the money is in this organization. It's not coming from dues. A substantial amount comes from those cards and whatever, so if you can, and the calendars and the rest, if you can contribute when you get it, please do. But we don't have a business because we couldn't function as a business. We have the love of members and love of families and love of people that care about JWV. I just needed to point it out so you get a feel for this budget rather than just say it's a bunch of numbers and the rest. I mean, I had a question like, why is, let's try this one. Why affiliate and dues gone from $1,500 to $6,000? There's got to be a reason for it.
Okay, I don't have the exact reason, but my guess, without having the information, is that we were informed by National that something was going to come in that category that may not have come in a prior year. It may have been something that we renew every 2 or 3 years on the expense side. Okay? On the revenue side, again, they may be expecting something that we did not anticipate when we were preparing the budget, and they said, oh, by the way, we're going to have this event, and we expect some revenue to come in. But I will get the answers for you. Okay. Robert, please come to the mic and please answer.
I think I still have a command voice. Yes. The answer is, David, that line item includes funds for the inauguration in 2021. January 20th, there will be an inauguration. We spend money for that. We have in the past. So it's one of the sub-accounts that makes up that total line item. Got it.
On the expense side, okay.
At JWV, we're helping with the other military
The Allied
organizations.
Veterans Group.
Got it. Thank you.
Under holiday cards, if someone could refresh my memory, but I got what I thought were holiday cards this year, and it didn't say Happy New Year, they were blank, unless my memory's wrong. So could they, next year, please say Happy New Year rather than be blank inside? Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions on the budget? Do we need a motion now to accept? Yep. Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept as presented.
I make a motion that the budget be presented.
Is there a second? Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you for your time. Budget is passed.
Thank you, Alan. Now I'd like to introduce Arthur Kaplan from Taylor, who's going to discuss personnel.
We had our personnel meeting yesterday, and the comments ran from they walk on water to get a gun. So the get a gun part is pretty easy to fix, and for the next few weeks we will fix the problems that people conceive to be large, but they're not. So we'll get right on it and take care of it.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Arthur? None. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Eddie Goldwasser, Chairman of the Convention Committee.
I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the committee that served on the committee, served on our deliberations last night. The one item that we discussed was the future for the NEC. The last several years, people have been asking to take the NEC out of the D.C. area. There was no longer a need to keep it here in D.C. It was moved here a number of years ago, getting into some history, because the National Commander testified during the period of the NEC. So when he testified, there was a big entourage for them, for the members of Congress to support the National Commander's testimony. At that time, there was like 5 different veterans organizations that testified at the same time, and you saw all their commanders or executive directors seated at a table, and the room was packed with veterans. Well, Congress didn't like being put on the spot, I guess, so they eliminated that, and now the National Commander does not testify in conjunction with our NEC. Going back to the way it used to be, and many of our national commanders in this room today did not have an entourage with them when they testified. So we have been searching around for a site for an NEC. People said, well, we should have it in Washington. It's because 125th. Well, we're having a festivity in November celebrating our 125th, and if you wanted to say it should be in Washington because that's where we are and should be. The organization was founded in New York City in 1896 in a, I guess it was a music house at that time, an opera house in Manhattan that has since been torn down, and it is now a hotel, but the site is a hotel, but a plaque was erected in the hotel commemorating the fact that the Jewish War Veterans was founded on that site in 1896. So if anything, it should have been in New York. But the prices in New York and Washington are unbelievable. So we searched around to various other cities. Possibly people said, well, take it to a warm weather area. And you're a majority of 1. 2. Do I hear 3? No. So anyhow, make a long story short, We do have a proposal which was recommended last night by the committee to have the NEC at the Embassy Suites January 18th through 31st. It's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, departing on Sunday at the the 28th to the 31st, the 28th of January being a Thursday, the 31st being a Sunday. It is 3 nights, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, departing on Sunday the 31st at the Embassy Suites, Orlando International Airport in Florida. For those that want the transportation from the airport to the hotel, it's there. For those that wanted free parking that were driving there, it's there. For those that wanted a breakfast served with their daily rental, it's there. For those of us who liked it a little libation in the evening, it's there. For those of us, especially those sitting up here, who don't like paying for meeting space, it's there. We don't have to pay for meeting space or for room setup. So everything was a go. The rate is $165 a night inclusive, inasmuch as that the Jewish war veterans are tax exempt in the state of Florida, and reservations will be made through the national organization. So the national organization will be paying the hotel, which qualifies us for the sales tax exemption. Now, in most hotels in most cities, when you talk about sales tax in regard to hotel bills, it ranges anywhere from approximately 13% to 17.5%. We are completely tax exempt in Florida. In Texas, we found out when we had the convention in San Antonio, you were exempt from the state portion of the sales tax. You were not exempt from the city and county portions of the sales tax. But when you take the whole package together, it's approximately, in Florida, it's 13.5%, and you, simple arithmetic, 13.5% of $165, you're adding about $20 onto your bill. And you'll see that here in the DC area as well. So we are the benefactors of that, and therefore the hotel charge to the organization is $165, and that's what you'll be paying. And the committee recommends the adoption of the site and the contract, and therefore I will entertain a motion to move the question. Pardon? Comps? Yeah, everything is included. Embassy Suites, you have a full breakfast every morning. Omelets, everything made to order. Free booze in the evening. And just attend the meetings, that's it, you know. So there's a motion on the floor. Any other questions? Yes.
When you say free booze, you're talking about liquor and wine and beer.
That's what I was taught was booze. I mean, what else do you want? Sarsaparilla? I don't know if they have sarsaparilla. You might not like the brands of booze, but it's free. Any other questions? The rate is available for those that want to have an extended vacation in Florida. The rate is available 3 days prior to and 3 days subsequent to the 3 days of the NEC. The motion has been made to accept the proposal. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Well, I guess that's where we'll see you all next year for the NEC in Orlando. David?
Yeah, just a point, and we had discussed this, and I want everybody to understand. Department of Florida, Department of New Jersey goes to Capitol Hill. This will be in Florida. So what we're going to do, at least in Florida, hopefully New Jersey will join us, and anybody else that wants to go to Capitol Hill, we will find out, because we see 27, or we don't see all 27, but we see 27 offices as much as we can. We have 27 congresspeople in Florida, 2 senators. New Jersey, I know, does basically the same thing, and other states, Department of New York, stop by and see people. Other people do. And it's important because we have these contacts for JWV. Orlando, not in D.C. So what's been suggested, and what we intend to do in Florida, and hopefully everybody will join us, is National will give it, well, first of all, Eddie told us, and Eddie's an expert on this, that we ought to, you don't want on a Monday and a Friday to see Congress people because they want to go home or they haven't come back. So now you're stuck with Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And Eddie said that we shouldn't, the hotel's the cheapest night, Monday and Tuesday are the most expensive. On a Wednesday is the best night to do it. So what we were going to ask the staff is sometime in March, we will find out when the Congress people will be in
Preferable dates in March.
Congress people will be in session. We will find that out first. Second of all, what we will end up doing, for example, in Florida, we will have all fly up here on a, let's say, a Wednesday. By 12 o'clock, we'll start seeing people from 12 to 6 o'clock at night. The next day, we will see people from 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. Then we'll all fly home. So we will be asking staff, by and through you, Eddie, or you, to find us a place in D.C. where we can save on the tax. We don't need rooms. I mean, we do need rooms. We don't need meeting rooms. And that's what we intend to do. And if those of you that want to come to Congress, we will try to make this jointly so we can all have the hats at the same time on Capitol Hill and show the hats. Thank you for that, Eddie, and if staff will make sure that happens. Thank you.
Yes, Nelson?
I like what you're saying and what David's saying, but one thing we have to consider, now that we have some more time actually to have meetings, when we schedule the meetings, let's not have them overlap. For example, we got 4 veterans meetings, same time as the Vietnam veteran meeting, and some of that happens. We have an opportunity now to make sure there's no overlap.
Well, hopefully so, yeah. Any other comments? Then I thank you all very much. That concludes my report.
Thank you, past National Commander Goldwasser. Now for development, Ari Tesla.
Hi, good afternoon. I just want to introduce myself for those in the room who don't know me. My name is Ari Tesler. I'm a currently active duty captain in the Marine Corps. Thank you. Where I currently serve as a judge advocate. So it was only a couple months ago that I volunteered for the development position. And I just want to thank Greg and Kara for helping kind of get my bearings and for helping with everything going forward. So because I'm pretty new, I'll keep this short. I really have 3 goals for this year. So the first is to work with other committees so we could better articulate why we are asking for donations. And to do this, we must clarify the mission, JWV's mission, and the services that we provide to veterans. The second goal is to develop a means and method to focus on personal contact and outreach of high-end donors. And third, as mentioned before, JWV relies on 4 mailings a year, 4 annual mailings for the majority of their annual revenue. So these mailings, it's my understanding, have undergone very little change in the past several years, probably for the simple reason that they work. But that being said, I want to take a deep dive into the numbers and figure out how we can make the mailings more efficient, because right now it's a shotgun blast. We send out thousands of mailings and get a very small percentage response. So my hope is to dig into the numbers and figure out how we can better target the mailings, make them more efficient, and hopefully increase revenue with that. So with that, any questions from anyone? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll have the report on marketing from Harold Goldstein.
Just want to clarify some words that have been set up here. It's Howard, not Harold, and it's the marketing committee, not the publicity committee. Thank you for, at the last national convention, voting to start a marketing committee, and this is the first report of that committee. The committee is comprised of a few of us who actually got together after that vote and informally got together and then formalized it. Myself, Rachel Heyman, Steve from Arizona, Steve Grant from Texas, Kim Queen from Wisconsin, and Sheila Berg from Pennsylvania, and since that time, Dick Aronson from Massachusetts, who's currently in Arizona, and Lou Michaels from Minnesota. They've joined the committee, and we're getting great support from Kara and from Christy. We spent a lot of time in the beginning just talking about our mission and scope. Sometimes longer than some people would have liked, but marketing is a really broad subject. It encompasses marketing planning, target marketing, market research, sales, communications, and thus we felt we needed to really focus down what was manageable. Our discussions also included spending time with Barry Lachinsky at the membership committee to define our respective roles so we would not bump into each other, duplicate efforts, and just complement each other. From the meetings, many of you heard this at our committee meeting, which I appreciate, by the way, all the people who attended. I expected about 10 people. We had about, 40 or 50. For these initial meetings, we agreed to do 4 major focus areas. Target marketing, which is really determining the various segments of Jewish veterans who might be interested in joining. The messaging, how you find folks, what would be of interest to them, what products, what services we provide, what benefits we provide, are going to vary. If you're a 65, 70-year-old person just looking to retire, it's going to be different than a 30-year-old millennial who's just starting a family. So we want to do much more target marketing and find out what's important to them. We want to establish a repository for best practices and marketing materials. For those of you who are at the membership committee, there's an awful lot of stuff already out there. Barry laid it out nicely in those slides. What we want to do is develop some kind of method or way of getting all out to the entire organization. There's a lot of good stuff going on around the country. The third one is conduct a comprehensive study of all of our current members, find out why they joined, what they like about Jewish war veterans, what they don't like about Jewish war veterans, what they like about all aspects of Jewish war veterans. We also want to do a similar study with former members. Why did they drop out? Barry was pointing out numbers in the membership committee. Why did those people find out? Let's ask them. The fourth area is to increase the awareness of Jewish war veterans around the country, with all echelons looking at it. We are also looking at part of that is making sure that we are the voice of Jewish veterans. How do we best become the folks, if we are not already in some areas, where the press, where communications people come to ask our opinions and not just respond to things that have happened and say, here's what we think of it. So it's really getting out there, out in front of things. At yesterday's meeting, the marketing committee meeting, the leadership team agreed that our focus should be on creating that central repository, and probably the bigger task is starting to do the research projects, both with current customers and customers. We are not customers. We are spent many, many years as a head of marketing and research in corporate America. We have customers. But anyway, as our members, a lot of work has to go into that also. We're looking forward to the support of the entire organization. We hope to get this out and back in time to report at the National Convention what our findings are. Communication is going to be a big part of that, not marketing communications, but just communications. A letter from Harvey hopefully is going to go out, asking people to participate. Then a survey goes out. It's going to be digital, where if people have email addresses, it'll be done electronically. If people do not have email addresses and a snail mail, we'll do a stratified random sample of that group because we can't afford to spend the money to mail something out and get it all back in. All the mail stuff that comes in will be input as if it was sent in electronically, so we'll have one big database with which to work. So we're asking here is, and all your echelons, just make sure people send it in. There's a chance to have people have their voices. It's going to require time. It's a huge undertaking. It's going to require time, money, and patience. The committee is actually working towards that. We are looking forward to working with all committees, membership in particular, but any committee that wants to get input into a survey, please let us know. We're going to communicate what we are doing as a committee through the Jewish Veteran and any of the other means that we can. It's going to be transparent as we possibly can. The survey, to go back to that, is also going to be anonymous, confidential. We don't care who you are. We just want to get your input. Thank you.
Now we'll hear from Barry Lachinsky on membership.
I just got the high sign with the phone, with the Apple Watch, so I'm going to make this very brief because most of the individuals sat at the meeting. I have 60 names, so I can prove you were there. I'm going to give the abridged version to this, so we're not here for the rest of the night. National Commander, past National Commanders, fellow veterans, patron donors, and our career full-time staff, thank you and Shabbat Shalom. Our committee has worked very diligently since the convention, and we've started to put together some platform items of best practices that we're going to pass forward onto marketing. But what I'd like to do now is just start with some numbers. Last year, if you remember, in the 6 months prior to that, we had some statistics. But before we get there real quick, following the National Commander around is a tough job because he drives a lot faster than I do, and I have to keep up with him. So we'll just move the National Commander slide aside, and we'll continue. If you look at the black numbers, that's what was presented at the convention. The new numbers that I've gotten from National that says where we stand right now is under 20 NEC. So let's look at that bottom number. That's where we are, 9350. Now let's break that down. Remember, that's a yellow-coded number. The next slide, that's what I have. The interesting thing that we wanted to find out was how many gains and how many losses that we had during that period. There's 127 gains. There's 800, let me back up. There's 895 losses, which come out to that number. Now that loss is the big dump that we had of membership who has not paid for 3 years. JWV has a generous, so we can keep members and try to let the posts and the departments work with them to pay their dues. But finally, December 27, 2019, we had to drop the individuals who have not paid dues since 2016, okay? So that's where we stand right now, and if you look at that green number of 895, the important thing is we need to see where the losses came from. As Howard mentioned, that's important for data. We have the numbers, but we now have to go to the members to find out why. So the losses is 895. Involuntary, they passed away. We can't control that. Okay, but that number for that time period back was 210. We discharged for failure to pay dues, 2016, 681. That's a manageable number, not a number, that's a manageable action. At the post and departments, you can manage that number. Those individuals join JWV because we fulfilled their wants, desires, and needs. Somehow, in a 3-year period, they stopped paying dues. So you need to go back to the post commanders and the department commanders, and we need to work and find out why, but more so, they should be paying the dues. They shouldn't be in there. Now, this last number is manageable, but they walked. It's not a dues issue. And if you look at that number 4, that speaks very highly of JWV because we had four numbers, 4 individuals, 4 members that were dissatisfied. And out of a 10,000 base way back then, and if you have 4, that speaks very, very highly of JWV till we find out what's going on with the 681. Okay, so I need you to work on that number. What we're looking at next time is the number for 2017 because we'll be dropping that at the end of the year. And it seems like we roughly drop about 700. So I need you to go back to your post and I need you to go back to your departments. Anybody who is not paying dues has to pay. Majority of us were on active duty. If you fail to show up at a meeting or a drill or an assembly or in the morning you just decided you didn't want to come, trust me, your first sergeant and your sergeant majors would have come looking for you. So you need to get the post commanders back involved in the process, and they need to find out. Commander, are there any questions?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Barry. The Finance Board will be Erwin Burtnick.
Okay, the Finance Board, Erwin Burtnick, Department of
Okay.
Vice Chair of the Finance Board. Finance Board, as is the customary practice, no one from the Finance Board showed up. The Chairman of the Finance Board did not show at this meeting. Joe was, I don't know what reason, I hadn't heard from him. So that means I was the only person from the Finance Board. However, there were a group of people there. So what we did is we passed around the finance report, which no one likes. Anybody like the finance report? Raise your hand if you like it. There's one. One person likes it. That's it. The thing that we're going to do is modify that finance report. We're going to reduce the information on it. We're going to reduce the requirement for filing a finance report. What we've found is only a small amount of money comes in on the finance report for matching funds. So what this means is that most posts lie. Let's face it, that's what they do. They call something something else, but they lie. That's what we have. And for those that don't, I think about $3,000 came in altogether for all of the finance matching funds. And matching funds goes back a ways. Again, I've been around here, as most of you, some of you know, forever. Matching funds was the was a response to the selling of a building and all of the money going to the last couple guys to their shul. So we came with matching funds, and the matching funds started to become it starts to be used. So, for example, in New York at the military academy, the chapel was not matching funds. The chapel at the Naval Academy was not matching funds, and one post out in California gave $20,000 to it. $40,000 to it. And all of a sudden, another post in New Jersey said, we'll give $1,000. And somebody who we wouldn't want to mention Bob's name, somebody said, it's now matching funding, and we can't keep having these posts give money to this chapel. And Joe and I talked them back out of it, and now it wasn't matching funds. But again, they only get about $3,000 in matching funds. And what is the penalty if you don't file a financial report? The penalty is that you cannot vote for the person selected, not elected, selected for national commander for the next year. I mean, that's basically what it's all about. That's the only penalty that's there for not filing a financial report. And this is not good. For those where we do have ones where there's a requirement for filing, we should have some type of a penalty tied into it. And I've mentioned it before to some, and let me mention it here. Another organization, another VSO that I belong to, they're matching their life membership, which they don't have life members, they have perpetual members. Sort of like the perpetual service in cemeteries. They're a member in perpetuity. So what happens is that money goes into a special fund. That fund is invested. It doesn't go into the general fund. The fund is invested. And the proceeds of that investment are distributed 50% to the posts, to the chapters, and 50% to the national organization. Now, you would think this wouldn't be much. I was the commander of that organization two years ago, and the check I got for our perpetual membership fund, if I hadn't filed the financial report, I wouldn't have gotten it, was $10,244. And that post was able to use that money for post purposes. So we have to have something, some incentive, or even a disincentive if you don't file, but an incentive for filing that report. But one of the things we want to do is reduce the report. We want to reduce the requirement for filing that report. And one of the suggestions was to make it similar to the 990N report of the federal government. If you're below a certain amount, you don't have to file, submit your 990N and leave it at that. Some posts have nothing, have $1,000, $2,000. There are posts with upwards of close to $1 million in them. So we have to look at those big posts that have lots of money and what they want to do with that money. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Erwin. One announcement. The museum meeting tomorrow will be held in this room. Okay? Now I'll call upon the officer of the day. And Peter? Well, the acting chaplain, Peter Nikitas.
Stay covered. Heavenly Father, ere we part, we pray that the inspiration of this hour not quickly fade, but that it remain with us throughout the days ahead. May we carry forth with us the high resolve that the noble sacrifice of our fallen comrades be not in vain. May we firmly hold the torch which fell from their hands. Help us to build the better world of which they dreamed. Help us to guard the America for which they died and to preserve strong and meaningful their religious faith and ours. To these great purposes, O Heavenly Father, we rededicate ourselves this afternoon and continuously in the future. Bless us and give us the strength and courage to live up to our noble resolves. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Salute colors. Yeah. Officer of the day, please close the altar. Thank you. Meeting is now adjourned.
Our compliments to the chairman of the NEC, who concluded the meeting in less than 2 hours.
Thank you.
First, I'm going to the Iraq, Afghan. Vaccine doses. What? Yeah. What'd you do oversleep?
Who, Jeff?
No. Our boss.
Jeff. I said Jeff.
I thought you said Jack.
No, I said
Without
Jeff.
anyone else.
I'll tell her to meet me at the